And now we're going to bring up James. Welcome back. I know you've been
Welcome.
hard behind the scenes for us tonight. Rob Murphy from Journalistic Integrity. Rob, how are you, my friend? How's it going?
Yo, what's going on, guys? I'm doing well. How are y'all?
Good,
Doing
good.
well, man.
Love seeing you here again. Now, I know you have a fantasy football draft tonight coming up at 9 o'clock, so we're going to keep this very short and sweet and to the point. First question, discuss Patrick Mahomes with us. What are your expectations for him heading into 2021?
Yeah, I mean, the expectations have to be high because, I mean, he's probably the most talented quarterback in the league right now. And with the revamped offensive line, we've done a lot through the draft, free agency, trading for Orlando Brown. That was our one major weakness. And obviously, everyone saw it in the Super Bowl was, Mahomes was slightly injured, but more than that, there were rushers running free. It seemed like every other play. And so no matter how good of a quarterback you are, if you don't have an offensive line, you can't really do anything. So, I mean, I think they're really, really high. A little worried about our receiver position right now. We lost Sammy Watkins to, I think he's on the Ravens now.
Yeah.
But our second receiver is McCole Hardman, who's more one of those speed guys who you see come in for 3 or 4 plays a game, and he'll do an end around or throw deep to him a couple times, but he's our second receiver now. So a guy that's had trouble catching the ball in big spots and spots where Watkins on like a 3rd and 6, where he'll just, run like, in the middle, find a gap in the zone, and just kind of sit right at the 7-yard distance mark. And you could always rely on him catching the ball. So a guy like Hardman, who's smaller and can't really withstand some of the hits that you get over the middle. A little bit worried about that, but to answer your question, Mahomes, expectations are really high with Hill and Kelsey arguably being the best in their position.
Now, Rob, we talked about the revamping of this offensive line. Orlando Brown Jr. Getting back Luverne Tardif, getting him back, and then adding Joe Thuney. I mean, when I saw that go through, I'm like, how did this team even have the money to do so? But they did it. Talk about how important, obviously we saw how important the offensive line is, but amongst protection that Patrick Mahomes has had over the course of the last 3, now 4 years of his career, how much better can he potentially be, considering that this might be one of the best offensive lines that he's had to work behind?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine he could be that much better than he's been his first few years in the league because, I mean, he was setting an unbelievable pace. I mean, his first year starting, his second year in the league, he was the first few games, he was throwing 3 or 4 touchdowns a game. But I mean, with this revamped offensive line, I think it's not only going to help Mahomes, but the run game as well. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a little up and down last year. He had a better rookie year, but I think the run game is going to be something big for the Chiefs in that it'll help take a little bit of pressure away from Mahomes. And it's not just him doing these deep dropbacks looking for a home run hit. They can run the ball a little bit better. And that's something they're going to have to get back to a little more balanced. And I think that offensive line helps the run game in addition to keeping Mahomes safe in the pocket.
Now, switching gears to the defensive side of the ball, we talked about we've seen what the defensive front has to bring to the table with guys like Chris Jones essentially being the anchor of that defensive line. But what are your thoughts overall on Frank Clark? And I know you guys brought him in a year or two ago from the Seattle Seahawks, but has he potentially lived up to that contract that, you guys have given him? Has he been that solid, get to the quarterback type of guy?
So he'll have stretches in games where you have no idea he's on the court. And it reminds me of like Kevin Durant when he was playing with Westbrook, or there's some guys on the NBA where they're really good players, but they'll be on the court and you just don't even see them. They don't have the ball. They're not shooting. He'll have spots like that. But 2 years ago when we won the Super Bowl, he had some really big plays in the playoffs. And so it seems like he's one of those players that has a switch when we need him to get pressure. He's able to get that pressure, but he had some trouble in the offseason, and I was doing some research. I'm not sure what's going on with him right now. I don't know if you guys can help me out, but he was arrested a couple months ago, felony, weapon charges, stuff like that. So I don't know if his eligibility is in question right now or where he's going to be, but I don't think he's eligible right now. I'm not sure though.
Oh, I didn't even see that. I had no idea.
Yeah. It was one of those stories that, the news churns so quickly that it was like it had like 2 or 3 hour lifespan, and then it went away. And Frank Clark, he's a good player, but he's not like a huge name that's gonna be leading Get Up on ESPN for 2 hours. So I mean, I was searching for updates. I couldn't really find them, but I'm just starting to gear back and really do all my research on everything. So he was one guy that I wasn't really able to get an answer on where he's at right now.
Well,
I don't see anything. I don't see anything on like
it just has
or
the stuff from 2 months ago where he's arrested and all that stuff. But
yeah,
but that would be a big loss. I mean, you mentioned Chris Jones, who's a beast, and Alex Okafor. Those guys can get some pressure, but this is a defense that's really not that great. And we've got a secondary that's a little spotty, corners that are a little spotty. And so it's necessary for this team, this defense is predicated on getting pressure on the quarterback. We can't have these cornerbacks guarding receivers for more than 2.5 seconds, or else someone's going to get loose, someone's going to get free. There's some good tight ends, Darren Waller in the division, fast receivers in the division, Justin Herbert with the Chargers. So, I mean, we've got to getting pressure is going to be really key if we want to do well in this division.
So you mentioned all those guys, but who's your standout guy on this defense this year? Who do you want to step up to that plate and be a bigger impact?
That's that's a good question. So the obvious answer, the leader of the defense, Tyrann Mathieu, but he's not a good answer because he's already that guy. He doesn't really need to step up into anything. Juan Thornhill, who's he gets some play time. He's backup kind of safety, but sometimes when we go to safeties, he'll play a little bit. I think he's third year out of University of Virginia. Really good player. He's one of those guys you hear safeties have a knack for the ball. They're safeties. He seems like a guy that's always around the ball and had a few interceptions. And I would like to see one of our cornerbacks stand up. So I guess my answer would either be Javarius Ward or L'Jarius Sneed, one of those guys turning into a real number one cornerback and a guy you can put on a top receiver and not be scared that he's going to go 10 receptions for 150 yards, because that's definitely in the realm of possibility with where our corners are right now. And if we're not getting pressure on the quarterback, it's almost more likely than not that that'll happen against a team with an explosive receiver.
Right. Now, obviously, today was cut down day, Rob. And of course, with all the cuts looming, it's down to at least the initial 53-man roster. We don't know what's going to happen with waivers or anything, who teams are going to try to claim. But what are your initial thoughts? And were there any surprise cuts? Was there anybody you thought was going to make this roster for sure? And turns out they're on the outside looking in.
Nothing real surprising. One guy that we did let go, who we kind of saw coming, was a running back that we got. I think we drafted him in the 6th round 2 years ago. Darwin Thompson, guy out of Utah State. He's one of those scat back type guys. So he's like 5'7", really quick. But we've got Darrell Williams behind Edwards-Helaire, and we picked up Jerick McKinnon as a free agent. And then we also have a fullback. So we play the fullback. So we already have 4 backs. So it's tough to keep a 5th guy. But he was a guy, I mean, I just like those type of running backs where you just throw it out, get them in space, and they're really quick, can make people miss, especially in this offense where this offense creates space for playmakers. That's one of the cornerstones of what the Chiefs do. Misdirection. We're going this way. Oh, no, Tyreek's got the ball going the other way. And so I thought he could have been a guy like that. But, we have some pretty good running backs, and we already kind of have that spot filled. But he was a guy that I was hoping would do a little bit more for the Chiefs when we drafted him a couple years ago.
Now, Rob, we talked about players that obviously got cut today, but with the remaining 53 that's in play at this point in time, we talk about impact players to potentially watch out for. One guy on my radar, second-year player L'Jarius Sneed, had a tremendous rookie year, but any other impact players to watch out for on this Kansas City Chiefs team this year?
Yeah, so I'll go to the wide receiver position. And so I mentioned a little, question marks around Hardman as the number 2 guy, but Demarcus Robinson, who is kind of our 3rd guy right now, he's a bigger receiver, and he had a couple of really nice plays. He's a guy out of Florida. He had some trouble in college, and so he fell in the draft a little bit, and that's kind of where the Chiefs really pinned their ears back during the draft, is these guys that fall a little bit, really talented, had some personal issues, and then the Chiefs think, we get him in this culture, he's going to fall in line. he's got role models like Patrick Mahomes and other guys that can keep him under wraps. But he's a guy that had some really good plays, and if he can limit the drops a little bit, I think he's going to be a big part of this offense and maybe compete for receiver number 2 and kind of fit into that Chris Conley and Sammy Watkins role from years ago.
Right. I mean, you mentioned Mecole Hardman before. I think Demarcus Robinson could elevate to that wide receiver 2 role, which would be the ideal scenario for him this year, where Hardman could be more of that scat player like you were saying before. But a couple questions for all of us here. Record prediction for the Chiefs and then a team MVP. We'll go around the horn quickly, starting with Rob.
Yeah, so I think our over-under is 12.5 wins. So I'll take a half game over. I'll go 13-4. I think division's going to be a little bit better, but I mean, I don't trust the Broncos with Bridgewater right now. They are kind of a dark horse for, I think, a team that's going to pick up Cam Newton, but I don't think Cam Newton's that good anyway, so I don't think that would matter that much. So I'll go 13-4, and look, I'll keep it basic. Patrick Mahomes is the offense. He's the best player in the NFL, in my opinion. So he'll be the team MVP.
James.
Sorry, Tom, I didn't hear you. I'm going to go 14-3. In the beginning of the season, I see a decent amount of tough matchups. You see a team in Buffalo, you see a team in Green Bay, you see potentially a matchup with the Tennessee Titans going to Tennessee, going to Baltimore, and then obviously Cleveland to start off the season. Couple tougher matchups, but I think that the Chiefs have the edge in a couple of those games. But then once you get out of the bye week, with the exception really of the Chargers, that is a really, really easy schedule, that second half of the season.
We got the NFC East, which is love to see that.
I bet you do, man. I bet you do with our Giants over here. But that's where I have them ranked, a 14-3 spot. And like Rob said, it's how can you any other player for MVP with the exception of Patrick Mahomes? How can you not pick Patrick Mahomes?
James?
I am going to go with 16-2 if I did that math correctly. Because we're playing 18 weeks this year.
No, 16-1.
18 weeks, 17 games.
Yeah, okay. So correct my math, Tom. And I'm going with Hill as the MVP.
Tyreek Hill. Interesting. The cheetah, they like to call him. So one thing we didn't bring up is that from center to right tackle, they're all virtually rookies because Lucas Niang didn't play last season, and I believe he's slated in as the right tackle. Creed Humphrey was a second-round pick that the Giants should have taken, and I'm still mad about that. But Trey Smith was the steal of the 6th round so far. He's been lighting it up in Chiefs training camp at that right guard spot. I mean, Laurent Duvernay-Tardif and Austin Blythe are dealing with injuries at the moment. So is Kyle Long. So I think Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, Lucas Niang, it's going to fall on their shoulders. I like that, but I don't know if I'm fully confident enough to say that this team's going to win 14, 15 games. I'm going to go with a similar path as Rob. I think 13-4 as of right now. I think, look, it's tough to win in the NFL week in and week out. So that's what I'm going to go with there. My team MVP is Patrick Mahomes. And then final question for you, Rob, before we let you go and get to your draft is AFC West as a whole. What are your predictions for the AFC West? Who finishes in first? Who finishes in second?
So I think the Chiefs finish in first, going 13-4, and I think this is a big year for John Gruden. I think this is his 5th year, that big contract with Derek Carr. They haven't really been able to do much yet. They've got Ruggs coming back for a 2nd year. They've got one of the best tight ends in the league. I actually like them to take a step forward, and I mean, everyone's got the Chargers, and they've got a new head coach now. Their last head coach his name's escaping me, but he made a lot of bad decisions late in games. Right. And but I'm not sure. People are really high on Herbert. I think Herbert's good, but this reminds me of the Broncos hype last year with Drew Lock coming in his 2nd year. People were all over the Broncos. They like that defense. Obviously, Herbert much better than Lock, but I think the hype is a little too much. So I think it's going to be a big mosh pit of those 3 teams right around 9-8, 8-9, 7-10, or 10-7, right in the middle. So if I had to pick a second team, I would go with the Chargers, but I think all those 3 teams are going to be within a game or 2 of each other.
James?
I'm going just to be quick, Chief, Chargers, Raiders, Broncos.
Yeah, I would happen to agree with James as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Chargers will come in second. I think the Raiders come in third. I do like your point about the Raiders. I just don't like their offensive line. I mean, outside of Colton Miller, and I mean, Alex Leatherwood's probably developed into a nice player too, but I don't like their interior at all. I do think Justin Herbert might start off into a sophomore slump in 2021, but that's pretty much where I stand there. I do agree with your analysis, Rob. Kansas City will win this division. Not with flying colors, but I do think they will win it as the division has improved. So, Rob, we wanted to thank you so much for joining us tonight. Can you plug your podcast at Journalistic Integrity for the folks that listening and watching?
Yeah. You said it. It's Journalistic Integrity, Instagram at Journalistic Integrity, and then the link to the podcast will be right in the bio. So thank you guys for having me. I've got the first overall pick. I'm leaning McCaffrey. What are y'all's thoughts? Who should go number one overall? Dalvin Cook? Is there, there's a little Dalvin Cook talk?
I think
what do you guys
This
think?
is PPR.
Yeah, you get half a point for reception.
I think McCaffrey might be the go-to with Sam Darnold there, but to be honest, not really a sleeper, but more so an underrated guy. Alvin Kamara is just an absolute beast.
Yeah.
I feel like, how do you lose with that guy? Every season he's been in the league, he's gotten better and better and better. And in a PPR league, and with not knowing the status of Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara is going to be Jameis Winston's best friend.
Yeah, that's a good point. I might go Kamara. I'm worried about McCaffrey, and they have Chuba Hubbard, and McCaffrey's got a little injury history, so I don't know how much Hubbard's going to be involved in the offense, because he's a really good player, and he does a lot of the same things that McCaffrey does. But yeah, thanks guys for having me on. I always love coming on and chatting with the review and preview guys, all y'all's different little podcasts. Love talking with you guys.
Thanks a lot, Rob. Really appreciate your time. Good luck in the draft. Ace that number one overall pick.
All right. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
All right. Talk to you. See you,
Take care.